Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at a team that I think is incredibly powerful in the current Great League Remix Cup meta. With this team, I was able to go on a nice little undefeated run of 9 wins, 0 losses, and 1 tie. The team features a combination of Shadow Magnezone, Shadow Gligar, and Annihilape. I feel that the Shadow Magnezone Annihilape core is probably the best core of Pokemon that you can use in the Great League Remix Cup meta at the moment, and Shadow Gligar, as always, proves to be incredibly versatile as a safe switch. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches. Hopping into the first match, and we actually have a mirror lead Shadow Magnezone for Shadow Magnezone. Here you should always throw after 5 Volt Switches. This game, of course, I didn't know that, so I end up over farming extra. I shield a Mirror Shot. I go for a Mirror Shot of my own, winning charge attack priority. My opponent calls the bait, and this so far has been an absolutely disastrous handling of the Magnezone Mirror. My opponent is going to be switching out into a Shadow Granbull, and this is really not ideal for me. I will fire off the Mirror Shot, grabbing the shield and a debuff, and now I'm going to send in the Gligar. Gligar will fire off the Aerial Ace before the opponent is able to make it to a single charge attack, as Granbull, not the spammiest Pokemon around. Granbull will fire off the Crunch. This is debuffed. Gligar able to hang on. Gligar just cannot make it to the Aerial Ace. I send in Annihilape, and I'm going to get a pretty nice farm down. I now exit with energy. Opponent still does have their own Magnezone, but they're probably not going to want to send it into an Annihilape. In the back, they have an Air/Tropius, and I should be in a pretty good spot. I will be able to fire off the Ice Punch, switch into the Magnezone, and get the combo play with the Wild Charge. I undercharge it because I know even not fully charging it, it's going to be enough to KO. They don't have a move here, so I can just counter down with the Annihilape, and the opponent resigns the match. I see a terrific lead in the next match, Shadow Magnezone versus Empoleon. This team is ABA strong to Empoleon, so it's a very nice Pokemon to see. The Sableye safe switch, I'm just going to stay in and go for the Wild Charge. Due to the one-turn switch, I can outpace and guarantee to force either a shield or switch advantage. They give up the shield, I can now send in Gligar. I'm going to shield once in case they go for the return, they just go for the foul play, and I will fire off the Aerial Ace before they can make a potential return. The Aerial Ace does get no shielded, they're getting knocked out, and the thing is, if they send in the Empoleon, I've overfarmed enough that I am going to be able to outpace the Empoleon. So I can make the dig before they're able to make the Hydro Cannon. And again, the versatility of Shadow Gligar is incredible. We pick up the KO, in the back, it's Annihilape, and we take the win without even having to reveal our third. Bit of an awkward lead in the next match, Shadow Magnezone versus Shadow Gligar. I'm going to stay in this matchup, go for the Wild Charge, and dip, as Wild Charge does a massive amount of damage to Shadow Gligar. I fire off the Wild Charge, opponent actually commits the shield. That's uncharted territory for me. Most Gligars have been no shielding, so I decide to stay in, call the bait since I'm debuffed, but they do full send the dig. I send Gligar into the mirror, opponent is going to switch out, saving their Gligar for later as they send in a regular Feraligatr. Regular Feraligatr is quite a bit tankier than the Shadow, so I will commit the shield on the Hydro Cannon, over farm until just before their next Hydro, and go for the dig. I really need this to knock out. The dig does not KO. I'm forced to send in the Annihilape to catch the Hydro Cannon. This is going to hit for neutral damage, but it's still going to do over half my health. Back in comes my opponent's Gligar. They do not want to let me make it to an Ice Punch, so they are going to be firing off the Aerial Ace. And now I can bring back in my own Gligar. They're not quite in Aerial Ace range, so I am going to commit the shield and just look to massively overfarm in this matchup. Opponent goes for a catch onto Empoleon, and I need a perfect undercharge to win it. So I go for the undercharge on the dig. The dig gets them low. There's a massive frame drop, but I still get the farm down. And now the question is, can I get to the back-to-back Aerial Aces? I fire off Aerial Ace number 1. They shield. Do they have the move? They do not, and despite the frame drops mid-game, with the perfect undercharge, we're still able to take that victory. Moving to the next match, same leads as last game, Shadow Magnezone versus Shadow Gligar. I'm just going to stay in, go for the Wild Charge, hopefully land it this time, and then send in my own Gligar. So I fire off the Wild Charge. Opponent does shield. Okay, that's fair. I guess they are shielding today. Again, you know what? I'm like, surely they won't full send twice in a row, so I call the bait, and they do. You've got to be kidding me. All right, so I'm going to send in my own Gligar. Opponent will fire off the Aerial Ace, which is very okay. I can survive this move, no problem, and they're not switching out. They are not switching out, which honestly works pretty okay for me. I can survive the Aerial Ace here, but I do want to preserve some HP, so I am just going to look to overfarm. I go for the Aerial Ace. Opponent makes a beautiful catch, catching onto Dugong. But now I can punish this Dugong switch in with the Annihilate, as Annihilate, even despite the fact that I'm getting debuffed, should be able to just fully farm down now. Opponent will go for the Icy Wind. This is going to be a little bit close due to the debuff, but I do get the farm down. I'm pretty low on health, but I have a massive amount of energy, and with Ice Punch, I can knock that Gligar out of the sky. Opponent sends in a Poliwrath, anticipating that I wouldn't be clicking on the Shadow Ball. That's a very nice read by my opponent, and now I'm going to fire off my Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball into the Poliwrath is going to be no shield, and they send in the Gligar. I try and switch, but I'm unable to do so, but I should still have a very clear win con. I can just shield once, commit to the farm down. Their Poliwrath does not have a move, nor are they one off a move, so I just farm down. I leave with the back-to-back Aerial Aces. My opponent was able to make a very nice play there by sending in the Poliwrath, expecting that I would just go for the Ice Punch, and by sniping my energy with their Gligar. But the good news is, with energy management, again, we're still able to take the win. Moving to the next match, we see an amazing lead Shadow Magnezone into Froslass as we look to try and complete the 5-0 set. Opponent safe switches a Galvantula, and I have an amazing response available with the Shadow Gligar. Froslass is a Pokemon that I feel like I haven't seen in Open Great League in ages. The fact that there's Pokemon like Lantern, that especially after the Spark rework happened, have an even more dominating matchup there just makes it extremely difficult to run. But it is nice to have a Froslass meta, because I definitely find that I tend to enjoy metas more when Froslass is a big factor. I will fire off the dig is going to connect, and now I send in the Magnezone. They could very well bait, but it's not a risk I'm willing to take. My Shadow Magnezone is very attack weighted. In the back, opponent actually has their own Magnezone of all things. And now from here, I mean, it doesn't matter. I don't have to shield the Annihilate to win the game. They go for the Wild Charge. I can just fully farm down here. Unfortunately, I actually lag by a turn. So instead of being able to farm down, I believe they could have made a move. So I'm forced to fire off energy, but the good news is it's not going to matter. They can't make two moves. I get the Volt Switch down, and I get the 5-0. We're met with a familiar lead in the next match, Shadow Magnezone versus Shadow Gligar. Same game plan as before. I'm just going to go for the Wild Charge and dip. This does a ton of damage. The Wild Charge lands. We see how much damage that does. I send in the Gligar. Opponent is going to respond with a Dugong. Now, this might seem like game over, but Shadow Gligar is an absolute menace. Look at this. If they try and farm down as the Dugong, because I have a high-ranked Shadow Gligar, I actually make it to a second dig, and now they have to shield, or I flip switch. And they let it go. Down goes the Dugong with all that energy. Speaking of energy, they have a ton of energy on the Gligar, and that's what they send back in. I'm going to send in the Magnezone. Again, I'm kind of expecting they're going to bait, because it feels like a pretty safe bait, so I call it. I need to stop calling these baits, man. I keep getting hit with digs on Magnezone. Alright, I just need to start double shielding Magnezone, apparently, because I cannot call a bait to save my life today. Oh my goodness. I'm going to go for the Ice Punch just to try and force the final shield before my opponent can make a move, and they shield. And the fact that they shield gives me hope that whatever's in back is going to be weak to Annihilate. Let's see. I get the counter down. What's in the back? It's a Probopass. Oh my goodness, let's go. Probopass, firing off energy. I think this is a Rock Slide and a resisted move I can tank. It's a Magnet Bomb. I survive on 1 HP, and the game ends in a tie. So our unbeaten streak continues. We see a great lead in the next match, Shadow Magnezone versus Shadow Feraligatr. Feraligatr does outpace and can force the first shield, but in staying in to do so, they've now lost over half their HP. In comes Greedent. I'm staying in and going for the Wild Charge. Shadow Magnezone is the best Pokemon in this format at commanding shields from opponents. Even when it's neutral damage, like against Greedent, or even resisted damage, like against the Gligar, this Pokemon is incredibly good at forcing those shields away from the opponent. This Greedent is on Trailblaze. A second Trailblaze is not going to be enough to knock out here. I know that I can survive that damage, and I'm going to be able to get a farm down. I'm a little worried they might have a second normal in the back, so I think I'm just going to click the Ice Punch, but I'm not able to do so. The Wing Attack goes through. I lose so much energy. I should have only got one move there, but I should have at least got one move off. But apparently, I don't get my energy, which is unfortunate. And now I'm in a situation where I'm in a Gligar mirror, and I'm down a Wing Attack. I will overfarm and then wait a turn to make sure that they don't get a catch. The Aerial Ace is going to connect. Since this is a non-Shadow Gligar, 2 Aerial Aces will not KO. So my opponent here is going to overfarm quite a bit to try and put me into a range where an Aerial Ace will knock out. I still think I might survive this, though. And I do survive it on like 1 HP. I can just send in the Magnezone, and Magnezone should just be winning. I decide to shield. Now, when I do shield the Magnezone, I do get baited. I'm going to look to overfarm and go for the Mirror Shot. Mirror Shot is going to be able to pick up the KO onto the Gligar. Their only hope at that point was just to try and catch a Mirror Shot on a Feraligatr, but they're unable to do so. And now I'm going to be able to Wild Charge the Shadow Feraligatr, and the unbeaten streak continues. We have the worst case scenario in the next match, leading Shadow Magnezone versus Quagsire. I safe switch into the Shadow Gligar, but my opponent can massively outpace and hit me for big super effective damage with the Aqua Tail. I'm going to look to farm up to the dig, wait the turn to watch for the catch. They send in the Gligar, hoping for the double resisted dig catch, but due to the patience of waiting one turn, I can fire off the correct move, which is the Aerial Ace. I massively overfarm with the Gligar, firing off another Aerial Ace. They are the non-Shadow, so they can survive too. I farm up even more opponent plays to the CMP tie, and to my shock, my Gligar actually won a CMP tie in a mirror. I run, I think it's the rank 22. I've had it for a couple years, and I lose almost every charge attack priority tie in the Gligar mirror. That's very fortunate, as I get a shield advantage that I wasn't expecting to have. I'm going to send in the Magnezone, fully commit to a farm down, but this is tough. I'm running a Magnezone, and so far they've had 2 Pokemon that have ground typing that can hit me for double super effective. I fire off the Wild Charge. Unfortunately, their Mud Shot actually got denied there. I send in the Annihilate, and they're going to be firing off an Aqua Tail. Aqua Tail will connect. Opponent looking to farm back up. They're going to bank the Aqua Tail. The game's stuttering like crazy. Game, please. And in the back, it's Mantine, and this is looking very winnable. Shadow Ball connects, dealing some pretty significant damage. I'm able to make it to Shadow Ball number 2, and they have to shield this or they get KO'd. And they are going to shield, and now I can just send in the Magnezone. If they let that through, I probably could have Volt Switched down the Quagsire with the Magnezone, because I would have got 1 counter from the Annihilate, but instead they end up shielding, and now I can just exit with the Wild Charge and win charge attack priority over the Quagsire. Quagsire was pretty low on HP, but yeah, 2 ground types, not a problem. Shadow Magnezone is just insane in this meta. Another match, this time, not a ground type. We're actually going up against a Shadow Feraligatr and a Shadow Ampharos save switch, which I'll be honest, kind of stun-locked me for a little bit. I'm very used to seeing the Ampharos in the Ultra League, but in this Remix Cup, honestly, this save switch kind of has me in shambles. I was very slow on the switch in, and my Gligar is actually going to lose switch if they commit shields. So I am going to full send the dig, hoping my opponent tries to call the bait, and they do. That's huge. I'm able to pick up the KO. They're going to send in Feraligatr, and I am firing off the Aerial Ace. They left with energy, so I'm just going to fire off my move. Opponent looking for a farm down here. Oh my goodness, I don't get the farm down. I make the Aerial Ace, but they catch onto Empoleon, but Empoleon is now met with Annihilate. Annihilate, since this is the non-Shadow Empoleon, a Drill Peck will not threaten its health. So I can tank this, farm all the way down, and exit with a Shadow Ball. And with a Shadow Ball and a Wild Charge loaded, this game is over. My opponent, it looks like they may have tried to go for a move and lost charge attack priority, but they know there's just no coming back from there, so they are going to just no shield the move. We move to the next match. What do you know? Another ground type on the lead. It's a Shadow Gligar. Our Magnezone, no pun intended, has been a magnet for these ground types, but it's really not mattered. As the team keeps on rolling, I will fire off the dig as they send in a Jellicent to the Gligar save switch. The dig will connect. Opponent is going to have to throw 2 surfs to pick up a KO here. 1 surf is not going to do it. They can go for surf number 1. That's perfectly okay by me. And they're going to fire off surf number 2. I don't really want to shield this. Instead, I would rather just play for energy on Magnezone. Good energy management on Magnezone, I found, is basically the best thing you can do to make it incredibly difficult for opponents to defeat you. They're going to send in the Gligar. Gligar, purely off of resisted damage so far, is in a range where Mirror Shot KOs. They're forced to shield. The attack drop happens from that Mirror Shot, which is absolutely terrific. I'm going to shield as they do go for the Aerial Ace. They can make it to the dig. I'm double shielding. I'm farming down. I'm leaving with energy. I know I can get these shields back. It's Feraligatr in the back, and this game is over. In the moment, I didn't realize that I had a Mirror Shot plus a Wild Charge, so I end up switching into the Annihilate just to catch, because I knew that that was a very safe win con here for me, because I can tank the Hydro Cannon, and I can just make it to an Ice Punch. And Annihilate does win charge attack priority there. I actually decided to go for an undercharge here because I'm thinking this way I can guarantee that I exit with a Wild Charge. So I undercharge, they're stuck throwing their move, I get the extra Volt Switch, and then I realized, oh, I already had the Wild Charge. But yeah, I get the farm down, opponent knows that I have energy, and they're just going to resign the match. Now, how does the unbeaten streak end? Well, Let's find out. We lead into Superior, which at first doesn't seem like a terrible thing, but I have a very poor IV Magnezone. Look how much damage Frenzy Plant does. I looked it up after the fact. A regular Shadow Magnezone with high PvP IVs can tank that way better. I'm just going to send in Gligar. Opponent sends in Dugong. We have been here before, but I know that they can't farm down. If they try to, I can make it to the dig, and I have energy stored on the Magnezone. The dig is going to connect. Opponent, they know the matchup. They are not going to risk it, so they will fire off the Icy Wind. And now I'm going to send in Annihilate. Annihilate, here I should have waited my clock. That was a misplay on my part because, as you're going to see, that's actually going to end up biting me in this endgame. In the back, they have Carbink. I have energy, but I don't want to throw it, so I have to throw a ton of debuffed counters into this Carbink because I didn't want to throw my energy. I'm able to land the Mirror Shot, but now I'm just in a position where I don't have enough health remaining on the Annihilate to win this game. I can bait with the Ice Punches, but my opponent is more than happy to double shield, and by the time that I can get rid of this Carbink, I'm going to have too low of HP to be able to get rid of the Superior. I can just barely make it to the Shadow Ball, as Shadow Ball will guarantee the knockout, but one Vine Whip from Superior is going to mean game over for me. So unfortunately, the unbeaten streak does end. 10 games unbeaten, back-to-back sets, but unfortunately, game number 11. A little bit of misplay on my part, but also just a tough team comp, and my bad Shadow Magnezone IVs coming back to bite me. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support guys provide is sincerely appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.